Hello everyone, and welcome to another Let's Play of The Royal Trap by Hanako Games. My name is Anna Mardal, and today we're going to go through Chapter 3 of the Gaston walkthrough. Now, before I start, a note on words and pronunciation. I am informed by my friend, who lives in Britain but speaks French, that I am utterly massacring half the words in this game, which I knew that I was. I am informed that Madeline's last name should be pronounced Valois, and that my earlier pronunciation of what looked like Joyeux was completely wrong, and I can't even attempt to try to pronounce it correctly, so I'm not going to. But just wanted to let everyone know that yes, I'm aware of it, and also don't imitate these pronunciations at home because they're wrong. So unfortunately I'm from Texas, and this is the best I can offer, I'm afraid. So when we last left Madeline Valois, she was camping out in the woods with Oscar and Calum, and the plan was that in the morning we would meet up with the kidnappers, give them the gold that we stole from the treasury, and recover Princess Cassidy. So we're going to do that now. We're going to load game, load up Chapter 3, The Revelation. The hours of night are spent sleeping fitfully among the sticks and stones. Years have passed since I last attempted to camp under the open stars. I am not accustomed to it. Every noise startles me to alertness. The hum of insects, the croak of frogs, the restless slumber of my companions, the too early cries of birds. Each time I must still my heart and slip back into the darkness. I do need my sleep. When the sky begins to lighten, we arise. Oscar's scavenging turns up birds' eggs and wild asparagus, foods that can be cooked quickly, even without utensils. Neither Oscar nor I make any reference to our conversation of the night before. This morning we are strictly business. Once bellies have been filled and bladders discreetly lightened, a task considerably easier for my companions than myself, we are ready to seek the rendezvous point. Calum leads us to a country road, his particular destination marked by a crudely carved milestone, half buried in the verge. This is the place. Get yourselves out of sight. We could have hours yet to wait. Find a spot where you can be hidden and silent for as long as is necessary. His gaze falls on Oscar. If you can't do that, then get back to the river and stay there where you won't make a mess of things. I can do it. You had better be right. Remember, the most important thing is that Cass is safe. Don't take any action that could endanger that. But once the way is clear, don't let those bastards get away. We understand. Oscar and I secrete ourselves into the brush. Hiding among such thick cover is simple enough. Making a nest for yourself where the smallest movement will not rustle loudly and give you away is more complicated. Even the most patient soul must shift position occasionally. It's not good for the body to do otherwise. Calum's role in this is easier. He takes up a visible position along the road, pulls out a knife and a bit of wood, and begins whittling at it. For myself, there is nothing to do but wait and think. Oscar, I am sorry that I had to hurt you. I hope that this will prove to be the best path for both of us. You've been my friend since we were little more than children, but it was always meant to be a temporary situation. Both of us must learn to look past the comfortable and familiar in order to become what we are meant to be. It will be easier once Cassidy is safe. I am sure she and Oscar will be happy together. After a long and uncomfortable wait, I hear the sound of footsteps on the road. Calum hears it too, but he holds his position and waits for the newcomer to approach him. Waits, that is, for the newcomer to come close enough that Oscar and I may see without giving ourselves away. Who is it? Almost close enough. A single person in palace uniform. Dolores? The page stops at a small distance from Calum, close enough to talk, far enough that he can't make a grab for her. She folds her arms insolently and waits. Do you have a message for me? Oui, I maybe do. Here's the message. Give me the gold. Dolores is working with the kidnappers. How can that be? She helped me, didn't she? The deal was a trade. Gold for the princess. No princess, no gold. Do you think I'm stupid, Lord Fancy Boy? Once you've got your princess back, what guarantee I've got you won't go after me? Since that was exactly the plan, she has a point. You want her back, you play by my rules. And if I gave you the gold, what guarantee do I have that Cassidy is unharmed, or that you even have her? I'll take you to her. You throw me the gold, I'll guide you to where I left her, one step at a time. And keep your distance. You try to rough me up, I'll lead you in circles till she starves. Half now, half when I see the princess. Don't worry, Fancy Boy. I don't want her on my hands. Had enough of looking after lords and ladies, I have. Half now, no more. Fine, throw it over. A sack of coins lands with a heavy clattering at her feet. She opens it to check the contents, then, apparently satisfied, smiles. Go on with you then. That way. Keep moving, and I'll tell you when to turn. Together, they move into the woods. This is not good. The only thing to do now is to try to follow them without making too much noise, and hope we can still be ready to spring on Dolores once she's delivered on her promise. I look around for Oscar to be sure he understands what must be done, and find him making wild-eyed faces at me. There's no time, and we can't risk being overheard. We must rely on gesture. He points at his foot, waves his hands in a negative fashion, shrugs, and indicates that I should go on. Without him? I'm not sure what the problem is. Maybe he's caught somehow, or maybe he neglected to shift position earlier, and now his feet are too numb to stand and move quietly. Whatever the cause, he is out of commission. I will have to tail Dolores on my own. I creep through the brush, trying to keep both pale heads in sight, while avoiding dry twigs and other giveaways. Calum is in the lead, moving slowly at Dolores' direction and pausing frequently to look back at her. She, in turn, always waits for him to move before she'll take a step to follow him, never allowing that distance between them to close. Her caution means that, if not for my presence, she would have a fair chance at escape if she chose to run forward. It would depend on how quickly Calum could react. Would that be enough for her? She seems a cunning sort, and I don't say that solely because she misled me earlier, oh no. Fleeing from Calum would be even easier if he were temporarily distracted or injured. Could she be leading him into a trap? Before I can spin worse imaginings, she stops. May as well come out, Miss Nosy. What? I know you're out there, Osendower girl. I saw you with himself last night, playing broken bird. Tricky. Now I can wait here all day, but your delicate lady's all alone and helpless like. So get over here. I hesitate, trying to decide whether she's certain of my presence or merely suspecting it. Come out, Valois. So much for that, then. I raise my hands and move noisily into view. Planning to turn on me, weren't you? A caution. You would have done the same. I maybe did. Who's to know? I don't think she could have managed to hide her own allies in the same thicket we were hiding in earlier. But now that she is calling the shots, she might indeed be leading us to them. Get over there, next to him. Since Calum apparently wants me to play along, I obey her instructions and walk past her to stand beside him. The traitorous servant then produces a silk scarf, which she hurls in our direction. Tie yourselves together. Is this some sort of joke? You're the one playing Jester's tricks, fancy boy. Should have come alone. I've always wondered why you weren't dismissed from service. You make a terrible page. Well then, good that it's settled. Now do as I say. Arm or leg, I don't care. Calum picks up the scarf and extends his left hand to me. I'm not quite sure what he has in mind, but I place my right hand in his. He winds the scarf over and around and through our shared clasp, creating something that looks like a knot, but isn't actually. We are not tied, only tangled, and it will not take long to free ourselves again. Dolores can't quite tell what he's done, unless she comes closer to examine it, and she seems disinclined to take such a step. Despite his brief show of resistance, Calum seems quite calm about the setbacks the rogue page has put in our path. Of course, he still thinks we have Oscar in reserve, and I cannot tell him that my prince has been left behind. We resume our course through the woods, step by step. For good or for ill, Dolores' voice is our guide. And then at last we see it, a splash of pink across the forest floor. Cass! Instinctively, he starts to move towards his fallen sister, and his motion tugs at our joined hands. That moment of distraction is what Dolores has apparently been waiting for. Abandoning us and the remaining half of her ransom gold, she turns to flee. Go! We rush after her as best we can. It is not so easy as one might think to run in a forest, particularly while entangled with another. We could, of course, pause for a moment and remove the silk wrapping, but that would require that we pause. Instead, Calum crushes my fingers in his grip as we attempt a synchronized pursuit. She is one, and we are two, and in this terrain, that gives her an advantage. She's going to get away. We're losing. And then, quite unexpectedly, I hear a shout. It's Oscar! Somehow or other, he must have gotten himself loose from his predicament and tried to catch up with us, only to find himself directly in Dolores' escape path. He's not bigger or faster than she is, but he is there, and she can't swerve away in time. In one desperate leap, he tackles her to the ground, but that doesn't bring an end to it. Wrestling is not a sport that ever held Oscar's interest. With an angry woman in his grasp, a woman who has no qualms about using her knees and her teeth, he is completely ineffectual. A few painful, for him, moments later, and she has struggled free, but by that point it is too late. Calum has a hand in her hair and an arm around her neck. This is the only payment you'll receive. Her eyes bulge as the pressure around her neck increases. Stop! Don't kill her! I told you I wouldn't murder for you. We've caught her. That's enough. A traitor deserves death. So tie her up and bring her back to stand trial. Looks like you haven't told them. Her eyes roll back into her head and she sags in Calum's grip. No! She's only unconscious. He takes a deep breath and lets it out. Well, so be it. Tie her up if that's what you want. We have to get back to Cass. Between us, Oscar and I handle Dolores' limp body, binding her with the discarded silk scarf. She is not a very substantial woman, more wiry than bulky, and easy enough for the two of us to carry. So, Dolores was the mastermind all along. Could she really have overpowered Oscar and spirited off Cassidy all by herself? I saw them struggling here in the forest. I can imagine she'd get the better of him eventually in a brawl, but disabling him too quickly to cry out, and then dragging the princess away, keeping her hidden, leading me on a merry chase, spying on Calum, setting up a ransom exchange? That's a lot to manage for a rough-spoken girl who's never progressed past the rank of page. There must be more to her story than I'm seeing. Who sponsored her to royal service? Why hasn't she been either advanced or dismissed? She is someone's agent, I'm certain. But whose? And what is their part in this? And yet, Calum insisted that she was working alone and motivated by gold, not politics. And the last thing Dolores said was that Calum hadn't told us the whole story. Could she be his agent and turned on him? That might explain why he was so angry at her for being a traitor, except he said that he didn't know why she hadn't been dismissed either. I may have some questions for that woman when she wakes up, but in the meantime, we have a princess to rescue. We return to where we first spotted that telltale glimpse of pink fabric in the forest. There Cassidy lies, quiet and unmoving, at the base of a tree. Not a fairy tale girl in a glass coffin. This princess's hair and clothes have been snagged by leaf and twig. Her shoes are gone, her stockings horribly stained, and she's tied and blindfolded with more of those silk scarves. Is she all right? Do you have any hartshorn spirits? There is a faint moaning noise, and Cassidy's head shifts. She's awake! Get her untied and sitting up, carefully. Calum hangs back while Oscar and I help Cassidy to her feet and remove the blindfold. What? Ah! It's all right. You're safe now. We've captured the woman who kidnapped you. Safe? But... She ducks behind Oscar and raises a trembling hand. He's the one that kidnapped me. She's pointing at Calum? You stole Princess Cassidy? No, not exactly. That is not Princess Cassidy. What are you saying? I would like to introduce you to my brother, Prince Caspian. What? Oscar takes a step backwards, sheltering Cassidy behind him. You are mad. It was you who attacked us in the garden. Is Calum our enemy, or is he telling the truth? So we have a choice here to let Calum explain or protect Cassidy. And I think they both end up with basically the same thing. We're going to protect Cassidy, which is honestly, in my opinion, the right thing to do in this situation. She's clearly and understandably and correctly frightened of Calum. I take up position beside Oscar, blocking Calum's approach to his sister. I agreed to serve you until we found Princess Cassidy. Well, we've found her. My oath is quit. I won't let you hurt her. I have no intention of harming her. This was never supposed to happen. I did all this to save him. I'm not a him. You really don't remember anything? I don't know what you're talking about. Caspian. My name is Cassidy. You stay back. You're scaring her. Cassidy, why don't you tell us what happened last night? And you. I point a dagger at Calum. Shut up. He shrugs, but takes no aggressive action. We were dancing. She manages a smile at Oscar. It was fun, having so many people around, but it was also a little overwhelming. I spend most of my time with just my parents and my servants, so I thought it would be nice to go into the gardens for a bit of fresh air, and I wanted to show Oscar the roses. They're pretty, aren't they? They are. She seems to draw courage from his smile and continues. I was looking at the flowers and talking to Oscar, but he stopped answering me. I looked around, and Oscar was on the ground, and that man was there. He said Oscar was ill, and I should come with him where I would be safe. And I didn't know him, but I knew he was part of my family, somehow or other. How could she not know her own brother? So I went where he told me to, and then he tied me up in his room. Do you deny any of this? Now you want me to speak? Just answer the question. Did you abduct Cassidy? Yes, but I never hurt him. But you did hurt Oscar. He was in my way. And then you set up this scheme to, I don't know, steal from your own family? No, I had nothing to do with that. I left Cass in my rooms where I thought he would be safe until the search died down. When I came back, he was gone. That thieving page had decided to hold him for ransom. Cassidy, is that what happened? I don't know. I saw her. She waves a hand at Dolores, and I asked her to help me, but then she covered my eyes and pushed me around. I'm not really sure of everything that happened after that. It was dark, and I was scared. It doesn't matter. It's all over now. You're free, Caspian. Stop calling me that. And I'm going to interject here that Cassidy has claimed the identity of a woman and the name of Cassidy. Those are her decisions to make. The continued use of incorrect pronouns for her and an incorrect name, I understand why Calum is doing it, and I understand that he has the best of intentions here, but that is called misgendering, and it is incredibly hostile and should not be done. So if I'm hesitating as I'm reading, it's because I'm really uncomfortable being complicit in misgendering. Even if I understand why it's happening in the story, it's not an okay thing to do. Stop calling me that. Caspian is dead. He died when I was a baby. That's what you're supposed to think. He looks at Oscar and me. Are you satisfied? Are you ready to hear me now? Talk, but don't expect us to believe you. I'm not the one who's been lying to everyone. You may as well make yourselves comfortable. This could take some telling. You should sit down. You've had a hard day. You need rest. You're very kind. Once they've settled themselves, Calum begins his tale. Cass was my little brother, and the closest person in the world to me. All of our other siblings were much older, men in the making. In the meanwhile, our royal parents seemed to have little interest in their youngest offspring. I know now why it was, but at the time it never occurred to me to question. My life was the nursery, my toys, my minders, and my baby brother, who trusted me in everything. Then they came and took Cass away. They said he was ill, that he was coming down with the plague and had to be quarantined with special nurses. I never saw him again. It was half a year later that they told me he was dead. But if he was ill and we were always together, why was I fine? If he had to be confined, why not me? That's it? That's your reason for believing that Cassidy is Caspian? Of course not. At the time, that was my reason for believing that life was unfair and would always be so. I wasn't interested in my new little sister. I didn't want a replacement for Cass, so I didn't think about the princess. But that baby grew older, and still she never came to the nursery. Years, and I never saw her once. Sometimes I wondered if I were the one with the plague, who had to be kept away from my siblings. And then I was old enough that my parents were forced to give me my own rooms and full-time tutors. And once you were gone, then they took the nursery for the princess? I suppose. I didn't much care. I was used to it by then, being shoved aside, out of the way, ignored. It wasn't until a public event, when Cassidy was about 5 years old, that I finally laid eyes on the princess. And it was Caspian, older, too old for 5 years, and wearing a dress, but I knew his face. She is your sister. It's not that strange that she might look a lot like Caspian. Not similar in some way, the same face. Look at me. Do I have the same face Cass does? Well, no. No one else saw it. No one else knew him like I did. I didn't even question why he was there. All I knew was that my brother was alive. I ran up to him, calling his name. That was when my father hit me. I remember that. That boy. That was you? They told me he was a thief who snuck in, and that he might have carried the pox. That was why they beat him. Yes, you would remember the beating. Your father beat you? No, he had the guards take me away and teach me a lesson, once only. That I was wrong, and a fool, and a disgrace, and that I was never to go near Cassidy again. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. You have no need to be sorry. You didn't cause it. You wanted to see your brothers, remember? He turns back to Calum. Your parents treated you unfairly, that's clear, but it proves nothing. You made wild accusations in public, and they did not want the scandal. Considering what it's led to now, it seems they were correct that you would bring them grief. Caspian and Cassidy are different people. Cassidy was born before Caspian died. It's public record. Yes, and for so long I couldn't understand it. I almost started to believe that I was wrong. Then it all became clear. Caspian and I were nothing to them. The infant Cassidy was the heir my parents had been longing for. I think that baby died, and my wise mother could bear no more children. There could be no further princess. And so I believe they chose to switch Cassidy for Caspian and raise him as the heir of Gwenelor. They've done it so well that even he doesn't remember who he really is. Cass, they kept you isolated so that no one would break the illusion, so that I couldn't tell you the truth. Everything I've done was to get you out of their clutches so that you could be free. They stole your life. I'm here to give it back. But There's one obvious problem with this whole story. Caspian was a boy. Cassidy is a girl. You are, aren't you? Of course I am. You can't simply put a dress on a boy and call him a girl. It wouldn't work. Bind a living thing tightly enough, and its growth can be stunted. He looks at his sister, and his voice takes on a hesitant tone. They've kept you so isolated. I have to ask, do you know what is different between a man and a woman? Men explore and conquer. Women nurture and defend. Not what I meant. What I think he's trying to say is that men's bodies are different from women's bodies. Yes, that's why women wear gowns. That's true, but it's more a question of what's underneath the gown. Have you ever seen men and women unclothed? What? You can't ask a lady a question like that. She can, being a lady herself. Of course I haven't. It wouldn't be proper. In paintings or statues, perhaps. Books of engravings? I would never look at such things. Not even Sylvia de Gauzir's The Myriad Ways? It's very famous. Convenient, isn't it, that they've sheltered their princess so profoundly? There's nothing unusual about a princess being modest. Yes, but so much so that she can't even grasp the point of what we're asking? What point? Oh, for soil's sake! We turn to discover that Dolores is apparently no longer unconscious. Still bound, she twists herself part upright to speak. They're trying to find out if you've a tail in front. A what? How long have you been listening? Long enough, Lady Lackey. I should have shut your mouth permanently. Oh, and then who'd you have to take the tasks your noble hands are too pure to carry? If none of you had the eggs, I'll lift her skirts and see if she's got 'em. What? No one is lifting any skirts. If that page tried to put her hand under my skirt, she would pull back a bleeding stump. It isn't necessary. There are other signs. I am, after all, supposed to be trained to observe. I set my preconceptions aside and examine Cassidy closely. She has a slim figure and a narrow waist. Her bosom, while quite modestly endowed, has a feminine shape to it. That much could be achieved by a slender dandy in a corset, but other features are far more difficult to alter. Look at her hands. She has long and graceful arms, but small hands. Men's hands are larger in relation. Her chin is smooth and soft and has no hair, and her throat lacks the male bulge. And her voice... That is your natural voice, isn't it? You're not forcing yourself to speak in a high tone. No. You didn't have your voice mysteriously change a few years ago? No. Well, there you have it then. She's a woman. I did tell you that. But you're a Caspian. You have to be. Don't you remember me at all? The nursery, you and I. You used to stand on the window seat and point at things outside to make me tell you about them. You liked to watch me fire a catapult or spin a top because you couldn't make it go as fast. Your favorite toy was a stuffed cloth purple dragon. You used to sleep with it. My favorite toy was a little blue bear that I carried around with me everywhere. I don't remember ever seeing a toy catapult, and I didn't enjoy spinning tops. Mostly, I liked dressing up my dolls and having them act out stories. She walks closer and lays her hand on Calum's arm. I'm sorry, but the truth is, Caspian is gone. I'm sorry. He sounds like he was a sweet little boy. I wish I'd known him. I wish I'd known any of you. I was always so lonely growing up. So you're really Cassidy. I really am. I can see the expression on Calum's face as he admits to himself, perhaps for the first time, that his baby brother is dead. Then everything. It was all for nothing. No. To his evident surprise, she wraps her arms around him, nuzzling her chin on his shoulder. It meant that we got to be together and talk to each other at last. Otherwise, we would still be strangers. Hug me back? Nobody ever hugs me. Slowly, cautiously, Calum puts his arms around his sister. I don't know why our parents treated you so badly, or why they kept us apart, but it was wrong. But I'm an adult now. They can't lock me away. We can start over. She steps away from him, still smiling. What you did because you loved your brother. That's not wrong. Yeah, really sweet. Now, since we're all loving and forgiving, how about you let me go? You are going back to the castle to face trial. I ought to get rid of her right now. It would save trouble. Because I can tell everyone that it was you who attacked Lady Fainting Blossom. Sure, you could kill me so I couldn't talk, but then you'd have to kill Miss Nosy and Prince Simple too, huh? What? Was that your plan? Of course not. My brother wouldn't do such a terrible thing. She's certainly loyal and forgiving, considering that she more or less just met him, and he kidnapped her. So we have a choice between defend Calum or accuse Calum. I'm gonna go with defend just because why not? Of course he wasn't planning to kill us. It wouldn't make any sense. He's outnumbered. With 2 on 1, it would be much too likely for one of us to defeat him or escape. If Calum wanted to cover his tracks that way, the smart thing to do would have been to leave Oscar in the castle. Then he could kill Dolores, then kill me, then hide the bodies, and Oscar and Cassidy would never know what had happened. I pause, realizing that everyone is staring at me. What? Sometimes your mind works in strange ways. I find her logic refreshing. What were you planning to do with us then? If Cassidy were Caspian and everything went as you planned? None of this is what I planned, ever since that creature put a stick in the wheel. What wheel? It's an expression. Oh, forgive me, my lord. My years of letters must have slipped my mind again. There is another question. What would you have done with Caspian, if she had been him? Done? Whatever he wanted. I wanted to tell him about everything he'd missed, growing up, and help him find his own life again. Help him get out of the palace, or prepare him to confront our parents if he wanted. It doesn't matter now. No, it doesn't. We'll go home. We will talk to Mother and Father. This time they can't brush you aside. I won't let them. I will make them explain what they've done. So you see, it will be all right. Only, could I have some water and something to eat? Of course. You didn't feed her? What was I supposed to feed her with? I didn't bring your royal kitchen. What did you eat? She laughs at me. I weren't hungry. I was going to be rich if I were light on my feet. If I made it, I could eat anything I wanted. If I didn't, well, it wouldn't matter, would it? No, it won't. Oscar, in the meantime, is still looking at Cassidy. What happened to your shoes? I think they're still in the palace. If she went through those tunnels without shoes, we need to wash her feet before any scratches turn foul. I don't mean to be trouble. You aren't. Let's get back to the water. There's nothing more to do here. We have, after all, succeeded in our quest. The princess is saved, and we are heroes. All is well. And that was the end of chapter 3. So, we have to talk about that just a little bit. Wow. So, kind of some problems there. We already talked about misgendering and how that is totally not okay to do. Now, I do understand that in the context of the story, Calum had his reasons, but even so, that's not really how you would go about, insisting, no, but I totally know your gender. The only person who knows their gender is Cassidy. Cassidy knows her gender. Nobody else can tell her what it is or can insist what it should be. That's her personal decision to whether or not to share it with everyone else. The world building of this game is, like a lot of Hanako games, intended to sort of turn our normal history and historical fantasy on its head and give women the power instead of men. And a lot of times I like that because it opens up a lot of different interesting ideas. And plus, there's just no reason for historical fantasy to always be this same old history that we've all seen and heard before. At the same time, we've introduced a situation where a trans woman, or at least a not cisgendered woman, because we don't know if Cassidy identifies as trans, but her brother was severely beaten and extensively abused for years, really, you could almost say his whole life, in order to protect the secret of her identity. And that's really problematic to write into a story. I do appreciate that Cassidy is innocent in this situation. She did not instigate any abuse. And I also appreciate that the parents in this story, who are theoretically think of themselves as supportive, are regularly shown to be wrong. Not just in this case, but in lots of them. They're not they're not good, wise rulers. They're actually kind of terrible people in some regards. But, or, you know, even if you don't say they're horrible, you can say they're complicated people. But supportive parents for people who are not cisgendered are so rare. Or I shouldn't say so rare, but rarer than ought to be. And to take and write a supportive parent duo who are simultaneously supportive of their daughter's identity while at the same time being massively abusive to their son, I don't like that juxtaposition at all. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but it ends up in a situation where the character who isn't cisgendered is being privileged and protected, while the character who is cisgendered is being hurt and abused because of the other person's, or supposedly because of the other person's non-cisgendered status. That is so far from anything even resembling the reality that most non-cisgendered people experience. And it can or could play into a lot of complexes that cisgendered people have about how we're oppressed for having to not oppress trans people, or we're oppressed for having to acknowledge their existence, or for having to serve them at our grocery stores. And that's not okay. So I have some really, this particular chapter 3, is just all the cringe for me, because there's the misgendering, which I really did not enjoy having to read out loud. I feel like I should write a letter of apology to Cassidy. But there's also all this backstory of quote-unquote supportive parents who were totally okay with her gender identity, but then turn around and utterly, completely, unconscionably abused her brother in order to maintain this secret, and presumably intended to keep abusing him until they could get rid of him, marry him off quietly to somewhere far, far away where he couldn't spread rumors. Is the only, I'm looking at this going, how was this supposed to work? They were going to keep him isolated from her forever and beat him if he ever opened his mouth, and then cake? Like, what was their plan here? And there doesn't even seem to have been a plan, which just from the get-go, that's bad writing. If you can't explain what on earth your characters, how they plan for this to work, then that's not good writing to begin with. But then when it starts playing into all kinds of problematic tropes about the mere existence of trans people and intersex people and basically people who aren't cis, that their very existence somehow is abusive to us, or an onus on us. No. So I have really strong feels about the intersection between the themes that the writer wanted to show us and give us to grapple with, and their intersection with the reality that most of us experience and are familiar with. So that was chapter 3. Chapter 4 is kind of when we get back, and then stuff starts happening that gives different endings based on the choices that we've made. So thank you for watching this Let's Play. Got a little long there at the end. Once again, this was The Royal Trap by Hanako Games, and my name is Anna Mardal, and thank you for watching. Bye bye!